We're really going through some unprecedented times right now. And it can be easy for us to wonder, what does the future hold for us? Where is God in all of this? And what is the best way to move forward? And as Catholics, a great place for us to look and how to move forward is in the Blessed Virgin Mary. If we look at the life of Mary, she had the greatest calling of any person who ever lived. She was called by an angel to give birth to the Son of God. And I think it's fair to wonder, was it an easy vocation, an easy calling for Mary to live out? Or did it come with its own share of challenges and setbacks, like many of the challenges and setbacks that we are facing right now? Well, let's look at her life. When Joseph found out Mary was pregnant, he wanted to divorce her. It took an angel coming to Joseph to convince him otherwise. When Mary was late in her pregnancy, her and Joseph had to travel 90 miles to Bethlehem for a census called by Caesar. And then after their long journey, they get to Bethlehem, Mary's ready to give birth, and no one is opening their doors for them. And they end up being stuck in a stable with animals giving birth to the Son of God. Not long after that, Mary and Joseph have to flee from their home country to Egypt because Herod and his men are trying to put Christ to death. They eventually return, but then on a trip to the temple, Mary and Joseph lose Jesus for 3 days. Can you imagine that? Have you ever lost something that's important to you? Well, could you imagine losing the Son of God for 3 whole days? I can't imagine the stress Mary must have felt. And finally, if we fast forward to Good Friday, Mary is at the foot of the cross, watching her son give up his life, dying like a criminal. When Mary said yes to God, it cost her. It cost her everything. And that's important for us to realize as we're going through setbacks and pain and challenges in our own life, that God didn't even spare his own mother. Why? Well, our faith is only real when it is tested. It's easy to love God when everything is going great and things are going our way, but as soon as things get tough, that's really where our faith becomes authentic. And the pain that we go through, it's not in vain. Think about Mary at the foot of the cross. I can't imagine how much that hurt Mary to watch her only son die on the cross. But think about why Christ was doing it. His death and resurrection was the very means that God would bring about salvation to the world. It was through his death and resurrection that God could give Mary the grace to give birth to Jesus in the first place. So when we follow Christ, it's going to mean there will be discomfort and trials and setbacks. And the reason why is when we say yes to following Christ, like Mary did, we enter into his paschal mystery. We enter into the Good Friday moment and the suffering and the death so that we can rise again with him on Easter Sunday. Archbishop Fulton Sheen has this great quote where he talks about there couldn't be an Easter Sunday without a Good Friday. There couldn't be a crown of glory without the crown of thorns. It's the Good Friday moment that leads to the resurrection moment. And the same thing plays out in our own lives, is that in being united to Christ, we are going to be stretched, we're going to be challenged, and we will be uncomfortable, but it's how God forms us into the saints he wants us to be. And I'm not saying it's easy. I know a lot of people out there going through some very tough times right now. And for myself, I faced my own setbacks. So a little bit about me. For the last 2 years, I've been running a ministry giving talks on the Catholic faith, but it hasn't paid the bills. So I've worked a number of different jobs to help support myself. And this has included stuff like commission-based work, working in food service, working in retail. So a lot of jobs that are low income and probably aren't going to go anywhere. And so there was a lot of concern about financially, am I going to make ends meet? Where am I going long term in my life? And right before all this happened, I thought I had a breakthrough. I received a job offer from a large company offering me more money than both of my parents combined make in a year. And I thought, finally, after years of setbacks, after years of fighting and just barely scraping by, I have my breakthrough. And now I can work a 9-to-5 job, not have to worry about finances, and spend the rest of my time speaking and witnessing to Christ. Well, about a month later, this whole pandemic happened, and that company reached back out to me, and they canceled the job offer. And so now here I am, thinking that my life was about to change radically for the better, and it didn't. I kept on wondering, why did I get the job offer just to lose it? Honestly, I would have preferred that I just never gotten the offer in the first place, rather than getting it, thinking this is how my life is going to look, and then having it be stripped away. So in this difficult situation, I had two options. Number one, I could say, because God didn't do what I wanted, I'm going to give up. I'm going to throw in the towel. I'm going to stop trusting in him. Number two is, even though things didn't go the way I wanted, I'm going to trust that God has a plan, that this happened for a reason, and that he will see me through it. And I chose option two. And it was difficult. I had no idea how things were going to work out, how things were going to come to a conclusion. There was a lot of fear, a lot of unknown. But remember what I said earlier, our faith is real when it is tested. What I'm learning from this is God took that offer away from me because he doesn't want me to take my security from a job or a paycheck. He wants me to take my security from him. And I'm realizing that even though I pray every day, even though I go to daily mass, I wasn't fully giving my life over to Christ. And what the beauty of losing this job, as painful as it has been, is it's allowing me to trust in God on a level that I've never have before. And thank goodness God did come through. I was able to find another job to pay the bills. So the fear that I went through was only temporary. And it was actually a great growing experience for me. So I'm grateful that I decided to stay faithful to my time in prayer. I'm grateful that I stayed faithful to resisting temptation. I'm grateful that I woke up every day and gave my best trusting in God, because I'm now a better person for it. Or if I had gone the other route and thrown in the towel, I had stopped praying, I had stopped fighting against temptation and just let my life fall apart, well then I would have gone to this moment where I would now have a job, my fear of finances would be gone, and I would have gone backwards instead of forward. So what we need to realize is that the pain we're going through, it can hurt a lot, but there's a reason for it, and it's temporary. And it's meant to stretch us, to grow us, to chisel us into the saints that God wants us to be. An example I think of is athletics when it comes to facing challenges in our life. And the reason why is, if you want to be a good athlete, you have to put in the work and you have to get out of your comfort zone. I remember in high school, I ran cross country and track. And several times a year, we would have a workout called mile repeats, where we would go to the track, run a mile at 5K pace, take a 5-6 minute break. We would get on the track and then run the next mile even faster. Take a break, come back on the track, run the next mile even faster. And the whole point of this was to get us ready to compete in a race environment and be comfortable with the pain that we were going through. And I remember my senior year, we were supposed to do 4 of these. The first mile, I ran 5 minutes and 35 seconds. Second mile was 5:24. The third mile was a 5:19. And I was ecstatic. I had never gone under 5:20 in one of these workouts before. The other 2 miles were great in and of themselves. So I was bragging to coach and I was saying, this is awesome. I'm happy with this workout. I don't even care what happens the last mile. Well, my coach looked at me and he said, I want you to run this next one even faster. And I looked at him and I'm like, Coach, I have nothing left to give. I gave everything I had on that last mile. One of my teammates, Aaron, he was over at the fence holding on for dear life, ready to throw up, and I wasn't far behind him. And I thought, there's no way I can run a lap, let alone a mile, let alone at a faster speed than what I just did. But after 5 minutes, I got on the track and I just said, okay, God, I give this to you. I'm going to give my best. And somehow I came through that finish line a second ahead of the time from the previous mile. And as painful as it was, as much fear as I had about the pain, I'm grateful for having gone through that because it's made me a better athlete. And I think we need to take the same attitude when it comes to the trials we're all experiencing right now. The Good Friday moment we are in, it's a workout that God has given us. It's a spiritual workout for us to build our trust, to grow in virtue in adversity, so that when things are going our way, we are able to really take off, bring other people to Christ, and be the saint that he wants us to be. That doesn't mean it's easy, but we need to keep in mind that our suffering is for a purpose and it's only temporary what we're going through. God does not waste our suffering, and that's a mentality that we should keep in mind during this time of trial. I hope you take encouragement from these words and it's motivation for you during these very trying times. I know I'm in the battle right there with all of you. I want you to know that God is with you and he will take care of you. Just to share a little bit about my mission and my ministry for this conference. My name is Stephen Toney. I hail from Peoria, Illinois. If any of you out there are fans of Archbishop Fulton Sheen, you might recognize the name because that's where he grew up and went to high school. He actually went to the same high school that I went to, so that's kind of cool. So I grew up in a Catholic church, Catholic family, went to Catholic school, but it didn't mean very much because I was surrounded by people who weren't authentic examples of the faith. And you can't really see the power of Christ unless you see an authentic witness. So by the time I got confirmed, I didn't even care about being Catholic. I just did it to go for the motions, but I could care less about Jesus Christ. I could care less about going to Mass. It didn't mean anything to me. I was much more focused on being an athlete. But when I got to high school, my life started to fall apart because I wasn't praying. I was making a lot of poor decisions. And it ultimately drove me to such a deep point of desperation that the only place I had left to go to was to God. I went to a Catholic high school and I began showing up early in the morning to pray and to go to daily Mass. I didn't even know if God was real, but I felt like it was the last option I had to turn my life around. And I started to see God's grace work in my life. I saw my life change for the better. I saw that I was able to handle the stress of life with much more ease and comfort. I was able to overcome my sins and my poor decisions and begin to turn my life around. So by the end of high school, frankly, there's no other way to describe it, but I was dead and Christ brought me back to life. And having experienced that, I wanted other people to encounter Christ as well. So when I got to college, my mission was to help invite people to a relationship with Christ. I got very involved in our Newman Center. I led a Bible study for 3 years, went on 4 mission trips. I was in a fraternity, and a number of my fraternity brothers were fallen away Catholics, so I invited them to come back with me to Mass. Several of them took up that invitation. I also discipled 2 student athletes who led the Bradley cross country team to their first appearance at the national championship. So I invested my life into these other people, and it was powerful to see them go through the same transformation that I did. After I graduated, I began working in finance at Northwestern Mutual, but I had this tug in my heart for ministry to continue to share the faith. But without the structure of a Newman Center, I wasn't sure how to do that exactly. Well, as I was working in Northwestern, I was invited to give a few talks around my diocese for high school retreats or for confirmation retreats, and I felt like God was calling me to continue doing that. After a year of discernment, I decided that the best way for me to win people to Christ was to be a Catholic speaker. In April of 2018, I launched my ministry, and I've been blessed to have spoken in 9 dioceses in 7 states to thousands of people around the country. And God willing, I hope to impact the lives of many more. This ministry is really motivated out of my own experience coming back to the faith. Frankly, I was at a point where I was ready to walk away from the Catholic Church and never come back. And seeing how much better my life is because of Christ, I want to reach out to those people who are thinking the same way that I did. I want to reach out to the lukewarm. I want to connect with the sinners. I want to connect with the youth who have all these questions and are confused and don't know if the church is right or wrong, or if they should listen to all the stuff they're seeing online or on social media or listening to in their music. I want to cut through that and be a voice of truth to them because I was once like them. And only by God's grace have I come back to the truth of the faith. And because of that, I want to extend that forward to other people. Christ said before he ascended to heaven, go and make disciples of all the world. Well, that's what I'm attempting to do with this ministry. I would appreciate your prayers in this. If you know of a good parish or school or venue that might be interested, I would appreciate if you'd reach out to me, let me know, and would love to work together. That's really the mission behind this. It's really been led by God's working in my own life and out of a desire to win souls for Christ. It certainly has been far from easy. There's been a lot of rejection, a lot of setbacks, a lot of challenges to overcome. But what I found is, as I said earlier, in everything I've done, no matter how hard things got, God never pushed me past my breaking point. He may have pushed me right up to it, but he never pushed me past my breaking point. And so with the speaking, just like everything else, I try to give it over to God and trust that even though I don't see the path forward, he will guide me and he will never abandon me.